On today's show, myself and my special guest, Aram Leighton of Just Baseball and about 700 other things, are breaking down, dare I say, the most important outside Juan Soto free agent of this offseason, Roki Sasaki, talking about what makes him so exciting, what makes him so different compared to other prospects, whether or not the Padres have a chance to land him, and just some other little offseason predictions as a little treat. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Thursday, November 21st. As always, I'm your host of Sometimes Occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javapeno or X at Javapeno or Blue Sky. I'm on there too if you'd like to do that. Same thing, JAVIIPENO. Check that out. Also, check out justbaseball.com. That's where I write and do other stuff, including their new newsletter, which keeps you up to date on all the kind of happenings of this offseason, because the offseason can be slow. So you want to be kept up to date when something does actually happen. So go check that out. On today's show, we're talking about Roki Sasaki. You heard it in the cold open, but if you didn't, I'm proud to be joined by none other than the co-founder of JustBaseball.com, the host of The Call Up, which is a prospects podcast that's very, very good, co-host of the Just Baseball Show. Among many other things, he is the baseball guru, my good friend and colleague, Mr. Aram Leighton. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Ned. Thanks for having me on. I thought we'd be celebrating a Jackson Merrill Rookie of the Year. Obviously, I thought next time I came on by the end of the season that we'd be celebrating it, and then Paul Skeens did his thing, and obviously you can't be upset with Paul Skeens getting that Rookie of the Year. I'm sure Padres fans are still, understandably probably making a case. I'm not as tapped into the reaction there, but I thought around I would say July that we would be celebrating a Jackson Merrill Rookie of the Year on here, and I could say I called my shot, but Paul Skeens had other plans.
I mean, look here, just subjective at how I actually feel is, I don't mind it. Guess what? I thought that Skeens wouldn't be the best young pitcher since 1913. I didn't see that. I didn't see that happening. That's just how the ball rose. But for the aggregation in the clip, as I said in yesterday's episode, Jackson Merrill would have won if he was dating Paige Beckers. Like, that's just a fact, right? You know what I mean? All right,
that's a great narrative to spin. No, but one thing I did want to know, the reason why I brought it up is I do think that they need to expand this PPI incentive a little bit more. So the prospect promotion incentive, right? Like the Padres did it right. They challenged a young player who they thought could rise to the occasion, who, obviously we talked about it in spring training, who after I saw him was like, he can rise to the occasion, gave him the opportunity, and he took it and ran. And he came up just short because another rookie absolutely dominated. But that rookie had guardrails, which I actually support. Like, it was good to have Skeens, ease his way into the season. And considering pitchers are getting ravaged everywhere and he's so important, but he has this, ushering in to the season where he's able to build up perfectly and then explode through the finish line. And, obviously the Pirates don't get the prospect promotion incentive pick because he wasn't on the opening day roster, Paul Skeens, but now Jackson Merrill and the Padres don't get one for coming in second. I think first and second place in Rookie of the Year voting should get the prospect promotion incentive pick as well. That was just one other thing I wanted to throw out there.
No, absolutely. And as I talked about yesterday on yesterday's episode, if everybody wants to check out, me and Bryce talked about, should there be a pitcher and batter who get Rookie of the Year nods, similar to the NFL with offensive Rookie of the Year and Rookie of the Year, or defensive Rookie of the Year, all that sort of stuff. Maybe you do that, et cetera, et cetera. But today's episode, guys, is not about Jackson Merrill, believe it or not, despite the fact that I would love if every episode was about him. But today's episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Forgot to mention that. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Speaking of running your game, man, here's the thing. The Padres have been running their game for a while, but they've had some issues lately. They lost Joe Musgrove for the season. they lost a couple of their pitching prospects, actually basically all their major pitching prospects. So now the big name that everyone's talking about because of the Padres' possible constraints in payroll is Roki Sasaki. And frankly, it's not just the Padres, it's everybody. And it's actually really fun. I actually think this is a really fun free agent. I wish that it didn't feel like there was a couple heavy favorites because Roki Sasaki, because of MLB's current rule structure, he's 23 years old, so he's treated as an amateur, not like a pro necessarily. So it's international signing pool money, basically, that you use for Roki Sasaki. This is not going to be a Yamamoto contract. But we got to talk about this guy because we've texted a couple times in the Just Baseball chat, just like, especially I feel like when the World Baseball Classic really was happening and people were on this in the stateside in the West were getting their first glimpse of Roki Sasaki. But you've been studying him for a lot more and a lot more finer detail. Let's talk about him, man. What makes him, just point blank, like what makes him such an exciting prospect? Is the hype correct? Is the hype justified?
Yeah, I mean, that was the kind of the first question I wanted to ask myself when I dove into it. Is like, okay, you see the word phenom being thrown around. I get to watch him throw in person in the World Baseball Classic. You could see how special he was, but also couldn't get a full idea of what he can consistently be, just in one game where you're in the stadium. And, I was trying to sneak my way to home plate to see the pitch movements, but it was kind of tough. But you could just see, how the ball explodes out of his hand and how the splitter, it was so unique that it kept getting labeled as a cutter at the stadium. And, that kind of prompted me to just dive deeper into the shape because I was like, that doesn't look like a normal splitter. And doing this entire dive that, we just put out on justbaseball.com, I wanted to compare it to Major League Baseball stuff and everything like that. It really would be, I think, the most unique 2-pitch combination in Major League Baseball the second that he enters stateside. And there's some differences with the ball, right? And a lot of times you'll lose a little bit of movement. Baseball's a little bit bigger in the major leagues and a little bit harder to manipulate. But even accounting for that, and we get to see him throw in the WBC where he was using, Major League Baseball, like the horizontal separation between his fastball and his splitter would be more substantial than any MLB pitcher. And by that, I mean, so his fastball gets a ton of run to the arm side and ride. Usually guys that naturally get that run are going to have similar action on their changeup or their splitter. What makes him so unique is that his splitter doesn't run. It actually stays straight on, and if anything, cuts a little bit. So you have a fastball that's running to the arm side, and then you have a splitter that almost works the opposite way or just straight downwards, where that is just a very unusual combination there that hitters don't really see. So when you have that much horizontal separation, it really plays up. And that allows that splitter to just dominate against anybody. And the consistency of that pitch is ridiculous. So those 2 pitches alone, I think, are going to, ensure him a very good and long MLB career. But obviously with some refinement of a third pitch and all that stuff, he could turn out to be one of the better pitchers in starting baseball, or better starting pitchers in baseball.
Yeah, it sounds great. And it's been really fun, I think, these past few years. I think we've had like a really nice run just in general of like generational stars coming over from Japan. It's been really, really cool to see. And yeah, just from what I've watched, this is a guy, and you also talk about this in your article, also a guy who's just a huge velocity guy. And I think that, this is a guy who I believe threw 100 when he was like a rookie and 19 years old. Like there's some like freakish vibe to him. And it also that was the same vibe that I think Yoshinobu Yamamoto had, where there wasn't really a lot of major league comparisons for that type of pitcher. And I know that Padres fans love laughing. And I know that people, I had some people who were like, hey, he's never pitched in Major League Baseball, this and that. And I'm like, nah, bro. The Dodgers, yeah, they've missed on a contract with a former Major League Baseball player, but that was off-field reasons. In terms of on-field reasons, they ain't missing with 325, man. Like, I promise you.
And there was a bunch of teams waiting to give him 300, or something right around there. Anyways, like it's not like if the Dodgers didn't give him 325, somebody else wasn't going to come in and give him 300 immediately. And that was another example there where we got to see him throw in the World Baseball Classic. So you got to see the pitch shapes and everything. And, that's enough when you have a whole department of brainiacs and you're able to compare and look. And that was another dive last year where I was like, holy crap, I don't know what to compare this to. So what I did, to your point, was I found a comp for each individual pitch. So I was like, this fastball is like this guy, his slider is like this guy, his splitter is like this guy. And I was like, it was almost like crafting an arsenal of different players into one. So, with Sasaki, though, the weird thing is I can't find a comp for the splitter. If you put it on a scatter plot of other splitters, it's in its own area. If you put it on a scatter plot of all pitches, it's with gyro sliders, meaning like the sliders that kind of bullet spin and dive downwards. That is absurd. So like he's going to be like the lone splitter in like a pile of sliders on a scatter plot. So he just does something that really is outlier with that pitch that already makes him, incredibly unique alone with that.
Hey man, all I know is baseball. I have a lot of beef with it. I got a lot of beef with the product. You and I have debated about the product a couple times, but let me tell you, talent is not the problem, and we're getting only more and more talent every single year. And we're going to continue to talk about Roki's talent and what makes him so special, especially when it comes to the velocity thing. I have some questions about that, as well as your pitch for why the Padres really have possibly more of a chance to sign him than people realize. But first, I want to take a second to talk to you guys about our title sponsor again, and that is PrizePicks. With over 10 million members, it's a lot of people. A lot of people are in the PrizePicks game. This is not some sort of, niche thing and whatnot, guys. There's a reason for that, and that's because they have all sorts of great deals. All you have to do is pick more or less on, what is it? Real quickly, 2 to 4. I think it's 2 to 4 players in order for you to win. 4 correct picks in order to 100 times your money. It's fantastic, guys. It is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And they also have injury insurance stuff. So if your player leaves, don't worry. It's not going to count as a loss or anything like that. Like I said, 10 million members. They've got a really active community. There's always sort of fun new deals coming in. Like if you sign up today, you can get $50 instantly when you play $5, and you don't even need to win. It's just a guaranteed bonus. And they also offer different weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where each Tuesday PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. So if you're like me and you're really hoping that your guy, Marvin Harrison Jr., gets the over on receiving yards, I may or may not have him on my fantasy team, you could do that on PrizePicks, as well as doing, whatever kind of spread you want, and just get those W's. So go check it out, guys. And again, check out the deal as well. Use Locked On MLB to get that $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And just like that, everybody, we are back here, thriving and vibing on the Locked On Padres podcast, talking with Aram Leighton about Roki Sasaki. And let me tell you, Aram, I don't know how at 19 years old you throw this hard, but there has been a thing of a little bit of a wane in velocity. Now, frankly, I thought that the velocity, some of the numbers you talked about in your article, the in zone whiff rate sort of things, and that, yes, it does go down, but I don't know, 741 OPS for a 23-year-old whose velocity it's not the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean? But I think that points to just how good he is, right? Is the fact that he's had some of these issues with velocity and he's still trying to develop some other pitches. But in general, let's talk about what do you think are some potential negatives for Roki Sasaki? If anything, I know that we're reaching here, but if there's any type of thing to watch out for.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because, I think when we go through these process with prospects stateside as well, right, where it's we're so excited about them that, almost setting unfair expectations by only talking about the things that they do great. I think it's fair to talk about the things that teams internally will probably be focused on to make sure that he gets to, his lofty ceiling. And with Sasaki, it's clear that even at 97, as you mentioned, which is what he averaged this year, he can be quite effective. But you did see a pretty substantial drop in the in-zone whiff rates when his velocity was at 97 instead of 99. It wasn't just the velocity. It was he also lost 2 inches of induced vertical break, which is what creates that, riding action on the fastball. So with velocity dropping and the induced vertical break dropping, the life on it, it kind of compounded it. And even then, though, with the running action that he gets, he's still able to get a ton of ground balls and managed. And also he has the splitter that's a get out of jail free card. But it was amazing to see him still be effective and really finish the year strong. I do wonder if there was a level of, they say it was shoulder fatigue, and in 2023 he had an oblique, I think, tear, if I'm not mistaken. So he's had injuries, but 2024 through that shoulder fatigue for most of the year, missed a month or so. But other than that, was mostly available close to 2 months. Threw a lot of innings and still was effective at that 97 mile per hour mark. But I think you saw with a little bit of the loss of life, not quite as much of the end zone swing and miss. The thing is, though, a lot of pitchers in NPB, aren't really taught to, like, it's not really, I think, as much of a emphasis out there to elevate the heater. And, as much as it is obviously here in MLB, where, you establish that fastball at the top and get that ride at the top, where I think there's a lot of fastballs that are in the middle third of the plate and then set up the splitter and the other pitches, where I think Sasaki, with the action on his fastball, like, he will succeed a lot more by elevating it. And somebody like Shota Imanaga, even, like, we saw him almost double his fastball usage at the top third of the zone when he came to MLB. And, we saw the success with that. So I think it could be as simple as adjusting his sights a little bit there. But I think there is something to be said. Like, you got to monitor the health here. Him at 99 is phenom. Yeah. Like, holy crap. Like, this is crazy. But him at 97, losing 2 inches of vert, he's still a freakazoid and he's still extremely talented. But now there's more importance on that third pitch and, the overall pitchability and things like that. When you've got that 99 mile per hour fastball up to 103 with the ride that it was featuring, and you got the splitter and all that stuff, like, it's game over. Whereas at 97, I saw much more need to locate that slider, which he started to do. And so I almost think it could be a blessing in disguise, where it kind of forced him to be a little bit more three-dimensional. Whereas, it was mostly fastball splitter in 23. He didn't need anything else. And then in 24 here, he had to use that slider, and he upped the usage pretty significantly because, I think he realized, okay, I can't just use my fastball every single time I'm behind in the count because it's not quite as dominant. But I think health-wise, that shoulder gets back. And again, it wasn't like it was a substantial injury as far as we know, that he should be just fine.
Hey, and here's the thing. What's so fun about Roki is also, we talk about some of the downsides here and some of the issues or what have you, but, like, this is still a player. You don't have to give, like, these giant contract deals like that. That's something you worry about maybe in the future. What do you think is, like, the worst case scenario for him initially? Like, is he a 3 starter in a rotation? Like, what do you kind of view for him, at least initially?
Initially, yeah, just probably battling himself a little bit. The one thing that I noticed with him was, when he faces some adversities, young arm, obviously, who has had, nothing but fantastic results for the majority of his career, he likes to work pretty slow. And, I could see also struggles to hold runners on a little bit. I think since the start of 2023, opponents are 25 for 28 and stolen base attempts against him. I could see, with the pitch clock, because he was a guy that at points was taking 25 plus seconds between pitches, like, guys stealing on him a little bit. I could see some innings snowballing on him in the beginning as he gets his feet wet and just gets comfortable and things like that. But in terms of when you look at the arsenal and look at everything, I in the beginning, of course, they're going to continuously try him as a starter, and I think they should, and he could be a frontline arm. Like, I think the worst case is kind of that middle rotation type that, but I ultimately, when I was looking at the range of outcomes, his floor is so high because I feel like his almost worst case scenario is elite closer, and like that's the crazy part, because the fastball and splitter, if the velocity does, for whatever reason, his shoulder issue, like, just kind of lingers and he's still at 97, like, going into 1-2 inning spurts, he's going to be back up to 99, 100. And that splitter is ridiculous. And he could be one of the best relievers in Major League Baseball. But, I look at him in the arsenal and the fact that even with whatever was going on this past year, like, there were outings where he's throwing 113, 115 pitches. And, the last pitch of the game is 98 miles per hour. So, like, if that's the wild thing to me, is like his 112th pitch of the game in October was 98 miles per hour. So, like, part of me is like, okay, it's not quite what it was in terms of, like, there might've been something bothering him, but he's throwing 112 pitches and the 112th is still almost 100. So, like, the subdued Sasaki still seems fine. I almost felt like at points maybe he was just withholding a little bit, knowing that, he was going to come stateside. And I think there was clearly a desire to get out of there for the last couple of years. So, I really can't see a ton of risk aside from the injury side. And that's something that you just can't really predict.
Yeah, man. And that's what we all like to hear. And the question is now, do the Padres have a chance? Can they sign this guy? I feel like most of the reporting that we've heard so far has been Dodgers, which is, I've complained about my podcasts. I was joking about the Merrill thing before, but I actually do think that there's been a little bit of a media bias in favor of the Dodgers lately. I'm sorry. I just thought that the Dave Roberts thing was patently absurd, and I'll never get over that as long as I live. But what is your pitch? What do you think is the reason that the Padres could sneaky actually be in there, despite what, Dodgers fans will tell you on Twitter?
Well, Sasaki's agent even made it clear, like, hey, like, there's no handshake agreement here. Like, we're gonna look at every opportunity, pretty evenly here. And I think you see the way things have kind of gone for the for the Dodgers the last few years, and it's been a lot of churn and burn with arms and things like that. And but also, I think it's very easy to say, okay, best team, one of the best developers, in terms of talent, which they are. Their R&D department is like unmatched. And it's, if I'm looking to, and you have to look at it through this lens too, right? He is coming over here, foregoing the potential $200-300 million contract if he waited 2 more years, with the hope of recouping that on the back end at 29 years old now, because he's coming a little bit earlier. He'll be a free agent at 29, can still get a big deal then, instead of signing his big deal when he comes. And then, the next time he hits free agency, who knows where he'll be at that point. So there's a very important, I think, focus on who is going to get me to the best of my abilities and help me be in the best situation when I hit free agency in 6 years. And I think there's a lot of reasons to believe that the Dodgers can do that. But, I think there was a lot of like, oh, well, the Dodgers have a couple other, Japanese superstars, so automatically let's give them another Japanese superstar. I don't think it matters how good the Japanese players are that you have. I think if you have players that have, made that adjustment and you have proven to do a good job in helping them make that adjustment, like a Yuki Matsui this past season. And of course, Yu Darvish, he's bounced around the major leagues a ton before landing in San Diego, but there's still a lot of value to just that side of things. Like, I think that has just as much, merit and value as well. And what I like is the Padres, where they're at in terms of pitching development is a lot different than I think what we would have talked about a couple years ago. And they just, they opened that pitching lab in the beginning of the year in 2024. And it's a really impressive operation that they've got there. And who the two of the people that were at the ribbon cutting ceremony were Yu Darvish and Yuki Matsui. Yuki Matsui was, I think, the biggest pitch clock liability that has come over in a long time. And I think it was part of the reason why he struggled a little bit, but like, he got acclimated, and I think he showed some really good things down the stretch. If you look at some of the underlying, and nobody really hit against him that well.
No one hit a splitter. The splitter's still unhittable.
I really think he's going to make a leap this coming season, but I think there's a lot to be said there. Like, the Padres have shown to be able to go get these international guys and help them, get acclimated. They obviously are a really good franchise, and maybe there's a little bit of Roki Sasaki that wants to be his own guy, and. He has his own moniker out there. He has this superstar identity for sure. I think, if you read some blurbs on him, if you look at his body language sometimes on the mound, like he's got an attitude for sure. Like he's a frontline starter. He acts like a young star. So, I could see him wanting to kind of be his own guy. But beyond that, I think you can feel confident that with what the Padres have invested in their pitching development side of things, their continued focus on, winning and at least trying to win, right? Like, we talk about all these other franchises, and I would do anything in the world for all 30 teams to be owned by somebody like the Seidler family, right? Like,
Yeah.
It really is, I think, palpable, what they've been able to build there. It's just, can they get across the finish line? I think there's other things at hand there, but I really think that the Padres can put together a very compelling pitch and check about every single box that, reportedly Roki Sasaki is looking at.
Yeah, man, Seidlers, all those things. That's just, wow, what a villainous organization. They're really the villains, aren't they? We're going to continue talking about Roki and the pitch to the Padres, and then a little bit of off-season stuff, because why not? It's just fun to talk ball every now and then. But first, got to talk to you guys about something very, very important, and that is Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. And through Hims, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. So whenever you're in those intimate moments, this is very, very important for you. It's changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. And it's 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. And if prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. With hundreds of thousands of subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/locked-on. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions do apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. But again, just one more reminder, that's Hims, HIMS.com/locked-on for your personalized ED treatments options. Hims.com/locked-on. Go give it a look. And just like that, everybody, we are thriving and vibing into the final segment of this podcast. We've been talking about Roki Sasaki. Aram made his pitch. My pitch is also, I love looking at the tea leaves, man. Obviously, the biomechanics lab. Obviously, all that stuff matters. And I will say that, like, people are bringing up all the Japanese stars. I'm like, hey, Shohei Ohtani went to the Angels because he loves Mike Trout. So let's remember that they're fans too. They love all these players. They're amazing talents too. So I don't think that determines everything. I do think he could be a bit of a gamer and be like, I don't want the Durant to the Warriors label. Yeah. Maybe he doesn't necessarily follow to that degree, but you get my point, right? Maybe that's a little bit too insider baseball in between the weeds. But my other thing that I love talking about on my podcast has also been just for everybody to keep an eye on the fact that I don't think that agents make comments publicly for no reason. Whether it be, there's always some sort of agenda, but the way that the Padres handled the Yu Darvish situation last year, I think hasn't been talked about a lot, where he just left for 2 months, more or less, for personal reasons. And the Padres are take your time. It's all good. Preller was on the phone with him, at least once a week or something like that. And the agent for Roki Sasaki praised AJ Preller in the way that they handled that. So I would look into that. And I'd also look into, during the Peter Seidler thing, AJ Preller name dropped Roki Sasaki when referring to international free agents. I just choose to believe that that's not on accident. As someone who is a fan of a football team whose head coach name dropped the quarterback out of nowhere as being the most talented in the NFL and then ended up being their coach later. I just don't think this stuff is by accident. I think people are very slick with what they do. So those are my other things and pitches. Really excited to see it go down. But there are other off-season things. And just as a treat, wanted to ask your thoughts about the offseason, man. What are some kind of things that you're looking forward to? Any predictions you might have, I guess, because I'm just so excited. I think that this is a really fun free agent class. I'm obsessed with Eloy Jimenez. That's how deep into all this I am. I'm obsessed with this guy. We'll talk about that more off air, but what are the kind of vibes that you're feeling heading to the offseason?
I think it's really fun where you have just so many unpredictable big sweepstakes for really fun players. And, it's funny because, we have some teams that have just kind of been a little bit on the cheaper side the last couple of years, and now they're like, oh, we're going to spend a ton. Okay, well, let's see if you do it. Boston Red Sox. But, yeah. But, also you do the disappointing side of it is you have some of the RSN limitations with certain organizations, and MLB's, I think, rapidly trying to provide some clarity on that, long term, maybe incentivize spending more. But the reality is these teams, if they have opportunities to sign these players, are going to. And I think some teams that aren't as deep into the RSN issues may be more incentivized now, like the Tigers, for example, to actually go spend, because they're like, hey, we might be able to get a player that normally would be much more expensive, and we could actually get them for what we deem to be the market value. So when you have just the starting pitcher intrigue, where like I have no idea where Blake Snell is going to go, I've guesses on some destinations, but I have no idea where, and you could make a case for him to go to a bunch of different teams. Juan Soto, it's very clear that it is a wide open sweepstakes, right? Like he's not going to just say, I'm going back to the Yankees. It's not going to be another one of those, Dodgers are the favorite thing. Like it's a wide open situation. That is when baseball is at its best, where the Blue Jays seemingly have the same chance as the Mets, as the Yankees, as the Dodgers, as the Red Sox at one of the best players to hit free agency in, some time. So like that side of it is fun, but you just have so much, I think, star power to this as well, with the Burns and the Snell and the Fried. And so I just think that side of it, it's so wide open, and I think there's going to be a lot of wealth spread around, whereas maybe the last couple years a lot of talent's been concentrated to a few spots, and I think this is going to be a free agency that actually disrupts that a little bit.
I would not be surprised at all if we did still get Star Palooza, or I should say Big Market Palooza, where it's just Dodgers, Braves, Phillies, a little bit of Padres, Yankees, and that's it. Like that wouldn't surprise me, but I also agree with you. Like I wouldn't be shocked if the Cubs like paid a lot for Max Fried. You know what I mean? Like I just would not be surprised if that happens. And I think it would be really, really cool. I think that there's just a vibe, man. Now I'm getting less empirical. I'm just talking about my feelings, but there's just I feel like we're missing something with the free agents this offseason. It just feels like things are a little bit more open.
I think the Tigers are going to do something too, man.
Right. The Royals might do something. Yeah. Like I think that there are teams. I think what it is that the top tier players are, like your Snells and maybe obviously your Soto, right? Like there's only a few teams for him, but I don't know, man. Like I just like Tyler O'Neill. Like, would it surprise you if Tyler O'Neill's a freaking 5.5 win player next year? No, like it wouldn't. I think Tyler O'Neill has crazy talent. Unlike some other, players that I'm a little bit worried about in free agency, but I'm really looking forward to it. I think that the potential of a Yankee Stadium protest, I think New York radio could be Hall of Fame caliber, which is why I still don't think that he leaves the Yankees. I just think it would be so embarrassing. That
There's three hilarious outcomes. There's three hilarious ones where it's either, he goes to the Mets, which is hilarious for obvious reasons. He goes to the Red Sox, which is hilarious for even more obvious reasons. But the sneaky funny one would be if he goes to the Blue Jays. It's like, I can already hear that. How on the radio, like, how the hell did you let him go to the Blue Jays? Like, I can't wait. So,
that's a weird team too. Yeah, Blue Jays. No one's talking about the Blue Jays, man. They're crazy enough.
They're desperate to throw. Like I don't know why. Like they
I don't know why, but like
addressing the entire team, or maybe extending Vladdy. But again, it's another one. They clearly want to throw money around. Like that's not like the mystery team. Certain writer on certain agent's payroll to just kind of bolster up the negotiation. The Blue Jays are for real trying to spend money. They have been now for multiple seasons, off seasons. So like, it's just fun to see that. And I think teams like the Royals and the Tigers and some of these other organizations are seeing that, hey, if we get to the playoffs, you saw what the Diamondbacks did. The Diamondbacks unfortunately maxed themselves out the last couple of years, but again, they went out and saw a soft spot, got Montgomery, didn't work out, but like we loved that signing when it happened. It was like, this is fun. This is good. We want to see more of this.
This is fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that side of it, I think teams are seeing, hey, if we sneak in the wild card, that's the part that you can control. The playoffs is kind of the Wild West. If you got a good team, you're hot at the right time, you go. So like, I think some of these teams that are hovering around 80, 85, close to the upper 80s wins, feel like, okay, this is where we punch and sign an expensive player, and this can help us hover in the mid to high 80s for the next 5-6 years. So I think that is the benefit, hopefully, that we could see of these expanded playoffs.
I really do. I think last offseason was low-key not great. I'm not just saying that as a Padres fan, but really carried by Shohei. Like that's basically was the big thing, and that's kind of it in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that like there aren't, but like the Soto thing, it's not just him. You've got like 3, maybe 4 frontline A-tier pitchers. You've got some, and maybe even 5, depending on how you feel about Jack Flaherty. You've got Teoscar Hernandez, who I think is really good. Walker Buehler might be the biggest discount. Your guy, friend of Just Baseball, might be like the biggest discount guy. And then and there's even free agents for us sickos. Like, I want to see where Michael Conforto goes. I've been obsessed with him, and I'm still convinced that he has like a 4-win season in him for some reason. I'm excited for him. I think that there's some real sicko free agents out there. I think there's some good meme guys like Verdugo. I cannot wait to see where Alex Verdugo goes. I think it's going to be really, really fun, and I don't think that it's been hyped up enough. I really don't. I think that's going to be great.
A career year, and no one's talking about it. Like that's Platoon a guy King, elevated
Platoon
team.
King. Yeah, Platoon King. Maybe he figured something out. His splits were a little bit better this year, but I'm just really excited for this, and I'm with you. I could see any range of outcomes. I could see now there are some teams that I think are out. Right? We know about the A's. We know about your Marlins. We know about. I think we know about the Reds. I think. Probably. I think they're not doing anything. I think they get like Jeff Hoffman at best.
They should get Randall Grichuk, but like even like Grichuk was good last year. Santander hit 40. He had 40 bombs.
I feel bad though. I feel like the Reds might be. There's just some teams in baseball I just don't ever see it happening. But Orioles, no one's talked about them. They have a new ownership, guys. Like they traded for Corbin Burns like 2 days after that got approved. Like they could. Heck, they could re-sign him. That wouldn't surprise me. They could go out and make a pitch for Soto. I just don't. I think there's a few more players than usual. So that's why I'm really excited for this offseason. And I just think that the discourse should be, in a lot of ways, really fun. In a lot of ways, a little miserable. But either way, I'm really excited for it. Before we close this out, though, Aram, do you have anything you'd like to plug for the good people?
Last thing too, I'm excited for all the old head, final free agency run too, right? Like we got Paul
Goldschmidt,
Scherzer, Verlander, like that part's fun too. And I hope they go all back to their homes. By the way, that would be awesome. But no, the call up we're breaking down, the farm systems all off season, updating all of our team top prospect list, all that good stuff. Recapping the Arizona Fall League, also getting you primed up next week for the Rule 5 draft, which will go down in December, of course, at the winter meetings, but a lot of fun arms as always. And, that's something that is a lot of fun for us to break down on the show. Of course, it's just baseball show. We've been interviewing players throughout the offseason. Just had Tanner Bybee on the other day, and we're going to have Walker on at some point this offseason once he's done with his world tour. But also, doing a lot of recap interviews with a lot of players throughout the season, and then doing our Playing GM series, which I love, where we get to go through all 30 teams, talk about their situation, and talk about some of the moves that we would make to potentially make them better. And I think it's become one of my favorite things to do. So check that out. And then, of course, the Roki Sasaki breakdown on justbaseball.com.
Absolutely check that out, guys. And look forward to there. I'm going to be writing again soon for the site outside the newsletter and ramping things up. So look forward to that. Just Baseball is king. Everybody, you've been listening to the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember, subscribe to the pod wherever you get your podcast from. You can follow me on Twitter at Javapeno, Twitter, X, Blue Sky. Those are the 3 things that I'm mostly on, that publicly at least. At Javapeno, JAVIIPENO. I'm just kidding, guys. I don't really have like burners or anything like that. But check that out. That's basically it. Follow Aram on Twitter as well, at Aram Leighton 8. He has not given into the Blue Sky mind virus. But no, check him out. He does great stuff as usual over there. And stay tuned. Tomorrow's episode, we're going to be reviewing Jerks and Profar's season, another fun free agent for this offseason as well. So stay tuned for that. Until next time, stay safe. And of course, stay faithful. My faithful homies. Take care.